welcome back to the world of gut health. 2 weeks ago I had an IBS flare-up. I was having lots of bloating, a little bit of stomach pain. What else? I was also having a lot of hay fever allergies, which are the type of reaction I get to foods that I'm intolerant to. And this was really worrying because I know I'm intolerant to dairy, wheat, and eggs, and I'd already cut those out of my diet for at least a good 2 months. So to start having new hay fever allergies when I knew for sure that I wasn't getting any more of those foods into my diet made me think that there's something new that I'm intolerant to. And if you're getting new food intolerances on top of things you used to have, even once your gut health seems good, even if you've been eating healthy, you've been eating all the foods you know you can digest well, and yet you're still getting new food intolerances, that means that your gut is damaged. That means that you have what's called leaky gut, where the lining of your gut has little gaps in it, little holes where it's damaged, and so new food molecules are getting through into your bloodstream which shouldn't be getting through. Normally your food's supposed to be fully broken down before it's absorbed into your bloodstream, but if you have gaps in your gut lining, things are getting through that have not been properly broken down, and those are usually the things that you get new food intolerances to. And so when this happens, it can lead to a really bad degenerative cycle. So you need to do something right away when you suspect that your gut is damaged in this way. So what I used to do every time I had an IBS flare-up or anything like this where I got new food intolerances is I would go on what's called an elimination diet. Elimination diet is when you cut out any food that you suspect might be causing you problems or that you know from past experience was hard for you to digest. Usually it consists of a super unprocessed diet where you cook all your own food so that you're absolutely sure what's going into it. And so for me, that's relatively easy because I like to cook for myself and I have time to cook for myself. But if you don't have that time, you're going to need to meal prep for this. So usually what that entails is eating a lot of just veggies, fruits, meats if you're not vegetarian, and maybe some really good quality fats. What I used to do was I would also have sprouted grains, sprouted beans, and sprouted nuts. And recently I've been doing a lot more research onto the different possible diets that are made specifically for IBS and gut issues, and I came across two diets. One was the low-FODMAP diet and one was the GAPS diet. Now for the past 3 weeks I've been trying out the low-FODMAP diet, and I did a video on that. I'll put a little tag to it up here so you guys can check it out and see what my experience was with it. And then after finishing 2 weeks of the low-FODMAP diet, I was feeling essentially no different than when I first started out. Now that said, the low-FODMAP diet is specifically designed for people with gut sensitivities, and cutting out foods that are high in FODMAPs, which are just specific highly fermentable foods, can decrease the stress on your gut. Even if you don't notice any improvement in your symptoms, it can still be good for a short period of time. And so for this 2-week gut reset that I did to handle my IBS flare-up and to try and heal my gut a bit was to incorporate not only this low FODMAP diet, but I also started the GAPS diet. Now, the GAPS diet was also specifically created for people with IBS, but it is designed to heal IBS or to heal any kind of leaky gut or digestive damage. And the way it works is essentially you cut out starches and grains, along with all processed foods, but especially the whole food group of starches and grains. There's two parts to the GAPS diet. You have what's called the introductory phase and then the full GAPS diet. So the introductory phase is designed for people who are at where I was when I started this, which is you're having a lot of bloating, you're having pain, you're having just a full-on what's called a flare-up for people who have IBS. And what the introductory phase of the GAPS diet is that you eat only liquid foods like soups. And if you don't have super severe stomach pain, you can have little bits of cooked veggies and meat in your soup. They're easier for your gut to digest if you're having problems. So day 1 and day 2, this is what I had. I had a bone broth soup that I made from free-range chicken bones. I just roasted it for about an hour with a little bit of fresh thyme, salt, and pepper. And then once it was finished roasting, I cut off all the meat and cut up the bones and all the connective tissue and all that stuff. And then if there's any bones that are too big or thick for you to cut, you want to roast those so that they'll crack open. It'll be easier to get at the bone marrow inside, which is the most important part. Once you've roasted them, crack them open, and then put all of those bones into a big soup pot, or I used a slow cooker, and then add any hearty veggies that you want. So those are things like carrots or any kind of root vegetable that can handle being boiled for a long time. And then you want to boil that for at least 12 hours so that you can get all the nutrients out of the bone marrow. So I strained the finished broth to get all the bones out, and then I picked out the little bits of chicken meat that were left over and all the veggies. And then I added fresh herbs on top and a little extra salt. If after a day or two of that your symptoms have started to reduce a little bit, then you know you're on the right track, and you can add in either raw veggie juice or raw berry juice. The reason I say berries and not just fruit juice is because when you have bad gut issues, it's very possible you have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It pretty much means that the bacteria that are supposed to live in your large intestine have grown too much. There's too many of them, and they've kind of boiled over into your small intestines. So the way your digestive system works is you have obviously your mouth, and then it goes down into your stomach, and then your small intestine, and then your large intestine. And so your small intestine and your large intestine are supposed to have two different collections of probiotic bacteria. Gut reset, I wanted to make sure that I was like covering all my bases. I wanted to make sure that just in case I did have SIBO, that I was going to be able to calm it down during these 2 weeks. One of the big things that can cause SIBO or make it worse is having too much sugar, as well as taking in extra probiotics that are supposed to be living in your large intestine. Because like we talked about, if you have SIBO, you already have too many of your large intestine bacteria, and so they're kind of spilling over into your small intestines. So if you're taking a probiotic supplement that has anything except lactobacillus type probiotics in it, you should cut that out. And what I was saying about sugar, on top of making SIBO symptoms worse, having too much sugar can also cause a candida yeast overgrowth. That's a big cause of a lot of digestive symptoms. And so for this 2-week period, overall I went low sugar, but especially for the first couple days, I went extremely low sugar, only berries. So if nothing has improved for you during these first 3 days, that means that you need to go on a rotation diet. This is what I did when I first got super sick, and I'm pretty sure it saved my life. So what happens when you get extreme gut damage and you have that damaged gut lining, so new molecules of food are getting in, is that you can create, when you create those food intolerances to new foods, your immune system is tagging those food molecules as invaders. And once you get really damaged, all sorts of different foods are coming in, and the more often your gut senses those foods, the more likely it is to tag it as an invader, and then you have a new food intolerance. And so what happened to me when I first got really sick is that literally everything I ate was starting to cause me problems. Even something as simple as like cooked carrots. So something that normally for an introductory GAPS diet and for a lot of people is very easy to digest. So I started a rotation diet, which means that if you eat a food one day, you can't have it again for 2 days. And what this does is that you're taking in the food and maybe your body is reacting to it. But then if you leave it out for 2 days, your body doesn't, I don't know the details of it, but it seems that your body, if it doesn't have to deal with too much of it, it doesn't tag it as an invader, it doesn't create antibodies to it, doesn't pretty much make it a food intolerance. And so if you have, let's say for example, on one day you have chicken, zucchini, carrots, and like coconut oil. I know it's really simple, but just go with me for now. So you're having those foods. I won't have that. I have that on Monday. And I won't eat that on Tuesday or Wednesday. But then Thursday, I can have those foods again. But then the same thing has to apply to what you eat on Tuesday and what you eat on Wednesday. So pretty much it's a 3-day cycle. Once you reach the point that you are starting to see some improvement and you've gone through the past steps I was talking about, maybe you've started a rotation diet, whatever it is, you can move on to adding in some raw fruit. I definitely recommend sticking with berries at first, but you don't need to be juicing them anymore. You can have them raw. Once you start introducing raw foods, definitely make sure you're chewing them really well. Not only does chewing activate our salivary glands, which helps break down the carbohydrates in our food, it also triggers a lot of hormones that begin the digestive process, which can tell your stomach acid to be excreted, to tell your bile to be activated, all these different things. It's like a domino effect, and it starts with chewing. Now by day 3, I added in fresh veggie juice made from raw veggies, and I also added raw ginger. Sticking with either all veggies or mostly veggies with a tiny bit of fruit definitely helps a lot. All right, day 3, in the morning before I ate anything, I tried a salt flush. So I have 1 liter of hot water here. I started out with a little hotter than room temperature because it does cool down as you mix in the salt. And then I mixed in 1 teaspoon of sea salt. And you can add a little bit of lemon juice too, just to give it a little bit of flavor, but that's optional. I chugged it in 5 minutes. It was not easy. And then for the next hour after that, I was running to the bathroom every couple of minutes. But I will say that I definitely felt better after the whole ordeal. I got rid of the bloating that I had left over from day 1 and day 2. Even though the bloating was already better by day 3 without the salt flush, the salt flush got rid of the last bit of bloating.
The salt flush is going to focus more on the intestines, small and large intestine, and the coffee enema is going to focus more on cleansing the colon and the liver. They both have kind of a granule soft water that brushes and kind of helps knock out mucoid and mucus plaque. So both of them, in my opinion, do a good job at doing that. So they're about equal when it comes to helping with mucus and kind of being a gentle cleanser of the intestines.
Day 4 and 5, I had soups blended up of veggies, and I also had smoothies. So you can put berries, you can put a little bit of raw veggies, blended up with a bit of coconut milk. I did add a little bit of pure stevia to make this sweeter, because when you're mixing veggies and a tiny bit of berries, it's definitely not very sweet. Okay, around week 2, I moved on from the introductory phase of the GAPS diet to the full GAPS diet, which means that you can have any vegetable, fruit, or meat, or fat, as long as it's unprocessed. And I stuck with mostly cooked food at the beginning, and then I gradually started adding in more and more raw vegetables, and I moved into slightly higher sugar fruits, but still I tried to keep my fruit intake low just to keep the overall sugar that I was eating low. Because I love having some kind of dessert in my day besides just fruit. I also did coconut milk, but it was canned coconut milk with 0 additives. Literally the ingredients were just coconut and water. No guar gum, no xanthan gum, which are both thickeners, no preservatives for sure. But what I did is I mixed the coconut milk, I heated up the coconut milk and mixed in a little bit of hot water so it wasn't so intensely creamy. And I added a little bit of pure liquid stevia, a little bit of vanilla extract. I just had it sort of like a vanilla steamer. Another thing you can do when you get to the second week, if you're feeling significantly better, is you can start to add in something called S. boulardii. This is technically a type of probiotic yeast, and it's recommended as the best thing to take if you have SIBO, which is that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that I talked about earlier. So if you have any kind of gut dysbiosis, or just like your bacteria in your gut are out of balance, you've got the wrong things in the wrong places, or too much of just things that shouldn't even be there, a lot of people recommend taking this as the first thing that you start introducing into your gut flora mix. So this is before taking any kind of lactobacillus type probiotics at all, and definitely continue to stay away from those broad spectrum probiotics, because if just in case you do have SIBO, you don't want to be adding more fuel to the fire. You don't want to be adding more of those large intestine bacteria when they're already overcrowded. So I started taking this at the beginning of the second week, and I've just been having 1 per day. And now one thing to worry about with any kind of supplement is the additives. So this one has cellulose, what the capsule is made from, organic inulin, fructooligosaccharides, which are not low FODMAP. So if you're continuing with low FODMAP like I did for these 2 weeks, this is technically an exception to the rule. And guar gum. Guar gum is a thickener, but it's one of the more accepted thickeners. It is processed, but it's just an extract from the guar gum, from the guar bean. So in my opinion, it's a lot less problematic than something like xanthan gum or carrageenan. Regardless, whenever you introduce something new like this, especially something processed, definitely take one, wait a whole 24 hours and see how your body reacts. And this goes for introducing anything into your diet that you're at least a little bit suspicious of, or that is in any way processed. Once you've made it halfway through your second week, if you're really starting to feel better, you can move on to seeds, sprouted nuts, and free-range eggs. If you don't know what sprouted nuts are, they're just nuts that have begun the germination process, so you're convincing the nut that it can start to sprout and grow into a full plant. And the easiest way to do that is just to soak it in water overnight and then rinse off, like get rid of that water and rinse it off. And then technically it's already started a chemical change inside that started the germination process. It is kind of time intensive. So what I always do is I just soak them overnight, and then the next day I'm good to go. That being said, I've had problems digesting nuts in the past, so the same rule that I was talking about before still applies here. If you know you've had problems digesting a certain food, or you had food intolerance to it in the past, wait as long as you can before reintroducing it. Like, introduce everything else that you're more likely to have an easy time with before you get to that food. This is also the point where you can start introducing fermented foods. I'd definitely stay away from dairy fermented foods until later, maybe a month from now, when your symptoms are completely gone and you're feeling really good. But if you want to have fermented sauerkraut, fermented cucumbers, which are pickles, definitely get the kind that either you ferment yourself at home or buy them from a company that actually says live probiotics are in the jar, where it's refrigerated and you know that it's fresh and it hasn't been heat processed, and definitely no preservatives. These can be kind of a shock to the system if you've been going without them for a while, especially if you've never had them at all before. So definitely start with very, very small portions and then work your way up if you feel good eating them. Okay, so technically this is the basic, simple way that I went about doing this 2-week gut reset, and I definitely feel a lot better at the end of the 2 weeks. I'm not having all my food allergies like I was before, my hay fever reactions. I'm not having any bloating whatsoever, which is amazing. It feels really good. And I have 0 stomach pain. I haven't had any stomach pain since day 3 at the very beginning of this whole process. So for me at least, this definitely works. There's a lot of other people who do this style of elimination diet and it's worked for them. The GAPS diet is super popular for people with IBS and it has worked for them. So if you've never heard of any of these things before, please don't just take my word for it. Go out and do your own research. Now, all that being said, there are a few things you can do that I did that I think are kind of like extra credit. They take a little bit of extra work, they take a little bit of extra money, but they can make a huge difference. If you don't know what an enema is, I'll link a video to it down below, how to do it and the basics of it. It's also one of those really traditional old school techniques, and you need about $15 to $25 to buy an enema kit. And it's pretty much another way to clear out your colon, but it does it by putting a solution, usually of water or salt water, into your colon directly instead of drinking it and having it go through your system that way. It is much more unpleasant the first time you do it. It's not painful in any way, but it just takes a little bit of getting used to. What I will say is, even if you feel a little bit better after a saltwater flush, you can feel a bit weird, but if you do an enema, you will feel amazing afterwards. During this 2-week period, I did my first ever enema. The first time I did it, I only got a ½ liter in, and they say that's normal, especially if you're small like me. And then the second time I did it, I got a whole liter of water into my colon, and when I flushed it all out, I felt like I had got the best night's sleep ever. I just felt like I had more energy. I felt completely debloated. I felt like, this is an overused word, but I kind of felt cleansed. Just felt really amazing. So I definitely recommend an enema if you can afford the $20 to buy an enema kit, and if you have a good hour and a half, maybe ½ hour to an hour in the morning to do it. If you want more in-depth information and like TMI info on other people's experiences detail by detail for an enema, there's a lot of videos on YouTube. I'll link one down below in the description box. You guys can check it out for yourself. Another really important one for the first week, especially when you're feeling really sick, is to try and cut your stress down every way possible. That means that if you're an athlete or an avid exerciser, you need to drop down to maintenance training for this period. You need to really act like you're sick, because if you don't let yourself heal properly during this period, having bad digestion means you can't absorb any of your nutrients properly. That includes your protein to rebuild all your muscles. So it's worth it to take a week off from training completely, or at least cut to maintenance training, and to let your body de-stress a bit and rest and heal, because your digestive system is one of your most important systems. So it's really crucial that you do this. If you really want to get some exercise in every day, walking is still awesome. If you're so sick that you're bedridden, obviously don't push yourself, but hopefully after the first couple days you'll be feeling better, and definitely go out and get your walking in. It's really important to get circulation every single day, which can only come from moving your body. That will help with getting rid of any kind of toxin buildup that you might have, and just help overall with healing. Next, we have water fasting. Something I did when I first got sick is I did a whole full day of no food, just water. Now, like I was talking about before, when you get really, really bad digestive issues, sometimes your hunger turns off and you just don't want to eat anything, or your appetite is low enough that you eat a little bit of food and you just really, maybe you feel sick or you just don't feel like eating more food. If you're at that point, that's when I would really recommend doing a 24-hour water fast. It not only gives your digestive system a real full rest and a chance to recover and heal a bit, but water fasting itself has so many benefits for healing, separate from just like giving your digestive system a rest. You go into autophagy when you're doing fasting. There's so many benefits. I'll try and link an article below about the benefits of water fasting in general, but definitely for digestive health, it's a great idea. If you're going to do it, make sure you don't do it more than once per week. And if you want to do an extended water fast, which is longer than 24 hours, first of all, you need to have enough body fat on you. Definitely check with your doctor before doing anything longer than 24 hours. Second to last, I made a whole video on basic rules for having good digestion, and all of them apply during this 2-week period. They're things like not just chewing your food well, but not drinking water during your meals to make sure that your stomach acid is strong enough to break down your food, doing diaphragmatic breathing to help calm down your system and put you into a parasympathetic state so that your digestion can actually happen properly. All sorts of tips about how to improve your digestion and how to have good health overall. Definitely check that out. I'll put a link for it up here in the corner or down in the description box below. The very last one to do for extra credit is to cut any meds or drugs that you are taking. For me, this is actually one of those situations where do as I say and not as I do, because at the very beginning of this, I was having allergies every single day. I was having really horrible hay fever reactions because, like I said before, that's what happens when I have food intolerance, is that I get like super swollen nasal passages. My eyes are so itchy, I want to tear them out of my head. It's really horrible. And it was bad to the point where I couldn't sleep at night. And that's the only situation where I'd say it's okay to continue taking some kind of like over-the-counter med or drugs, is when it's keeping you from your basic healing ability. And sleep is so crucial for healing. So this is the one situation where I'd say if you really need some kind of medicine to either sleep or to keep, you know, if you're having a severe allergic reaction, you need an EpiPen, obviously that's necessary. Situations like that where it's really, really horrible, the medicine, even though it's going to require your body to detox it, it's going to calm down the inflammation temporarily and allow your system to be in a healthier state, even if it's just temporary, and it's worth it, I guess. That being said, if there's anything you can go without, try and go without it. Short of a prescription medicine from your doctor that you have to take, everything else should be cut out. If you're taking Tylenol for headaches, if you're taking allergy medicines for just mild sniffles, if you're taking sleep medications, anything like that, please try and cut it out for this 2-week period. Those kind of medicines, your body has to detox them, even if they are a temporary help to you. They stay in your system for a bit after you've taken them, and they can cause a lot of digestive issues too if you take them for too long. So just in case, I definitely recommend cutting all them out for this 2-week period. I only took allergy meds the first 2 days of this whole thing because my allergies were so horrible I couldn't sleep. But by the 3rd day I stopped taking it, and by then my allergies had began to calm down and got better. That is the end of my list, end of my tips. The combination of doing the GAPS diet, which I'm so glad I found out about, and also continuing the low FODMAP diet, I think they work great together. I'll put a list of foods down below in the description box of what foods are high FODMAP, what ones are low FODMAP, so you can know what to do for that. If you have to, I know it's really hard to combine the two because it's a really limiting diet, but it's just 2 weeks, and if you absolutely cannot, I definitely say pick the GAPS diet if you can only pick one. I'll link a blog post down below, all the tips I talked about in this video, so you guys can read through step by step what I did to help my gut and get back to a place where I feel healthy. If you guys like this video, if it was helpful for you, please give it a like. And if you want more videos like this, if you want to see my future videos on what I eat in a day, hit the subscribe button and the little bell button so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video.